if somebody says I'm not a racist, I say I'm a racist. I know that I'm part of a racist structure. I benefit from this organization, the structure of racism. So I'm a racist and I'm trying to unlearn racism. And that often kind of shuts them up. I don't know if they learn anything from it, but it's like, yeah, I'm a racist. I own up to it. I hate to say that, but it's true, because I benefit from the structure of racism.
Welcome to yourbrilliance.com. I'm your host, Amy Waterman. Right now, it is time to speak up and take a stand, because staying silent is no longer a safe option, because what you don't say says as much about you as what you do say. But if you have ever posted something that someone took offense to, then you know how easy it is to get crushed for trying to do the right thing. It's like the minute you express an opinion, someone's going to disagree. And often those people are going to disagree loudly and rudely, and they're going to bring their friends along. So how do we tread that difficult balance between speaking up and potentially pissing people off? Like, do we spend ages trying to get our wording right? Or do we get a second or third pair of eyes to look over everything we write? Or maybe we get the advice of a writing and communications coach. Our guest for today, Marie Gettel-Gilmartin, specializes in helping small businesses and companies write engaging content. She is no stranger to tough topics herself. She writes about anti-racism and BLM washing. She showcases underrepresented voices on her Finding Fertile Ground podcast, and she is committed to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And today, she is going to help us use our voice to do work that matters. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So you have clearly found your sweet spot when it comes to using your voice to do work that matters. How does it feel to finally speak your truth?
Well, it feels great, but it feels terrifying at the same time. And being in the field of communications, somebody is always going to complain. I learned that many, many years ago. There's always going to be somebody. And so there's a quote that I really like, said by Maggie Kuhn. She was the founder of the Gray Panthers. And she said, speak your mind even if your voice shakes. And that's how I feel about it. I think it's really important to speak our truth.
Just quickly, who are the Gray Panthers?
The Gray Panthers were an organization that advocated for senior citizens' rights.
Oh.
And she also did a lot. I mean, she was a great social justice warrior and a Presbyterian, a Unitarian Universalist. And I looked her up this morning, and she did a lot of amazing things.
So what really interests me about that is that she was someone who was older, and she was stepping into her voice. And I know for you, this is something that you have stepped into more as you've gotten older. What was it like for you before you decided to claim your voice and you had that strength?
Well, my parents will tell you that I've always spoken my mind. And probably some of my coworkers, I think they have that view about me as well. I definitely have that in me. And one of my favorite necklaces has the words "make waves." So I like to make waves, but I also, when I was working in the corporate world for 29 years, I felt like I kind of had to dull my shine. I had to soften my voice because I had to be careful about what my company was doing and what my bosses thought. So when I started my own company a year ago, it's allowed me to develop principles on what I want my company to be. And I actually created a corporate social responsibility policy, even though I'm the only person in my company right now. So it gives me an opportunity to really be able to say whatever I believe in and actually develop a company that's based on that. So it's very freeing, actually, not to have any bosses.
See, that is the one thing where so many of us don't have that luxury, because we have to be very careful about keeping our personal opinions separate from the opinions we express when we're representing our company. And I know for a lot of companies, for a long time, there was this feeling that companies should not get involved in all those, politics or social movements. They should stick to their product or service because if they say anything, they're going to alienate customers, and they don't want to do that. But it's different now, especially after this year. Companies know that their customers expect more from them. They expect them to take a stand. So how can companies who are maybe set in their ways, and they're not just one person who can create their own corporate social responsibility statement, how can they
Yeah.
start incorporating social messaging into their brand, especially if this isn't what they've done before?
Well, I think the first thing is it has to start from the top. It has to. Many, many years ago, when I worked for CH Trim Hill, the global consulting firm I worked for 28 years, there was our regional manager in the Northwest decided to make sustainability a cornerstone of what we were doing. And he started out by having like a little pilot group. I was part of the pilot group as a manager, and we decided to pilot a sustainability program. It turned into, eventually it went global in the company, but his little idea that he started in his own little corner of the company grew into this great thing. So I believe that it has to start from the top. You have to have executives on board. Absolutely. And I don't think that companies should give messaging unless they're going to back it up with actions. So I think the first step is for a company to develop a corporate social responsibility statement and action plan. And that should absolutely include tangible goals that they set. And then they need to measure those goals, track their progress, and then report out every year.
So what we really see right now is a lot of companies aren't doing that, because what they're seeing is, right, especially with the events of the last couple of months, we need to put out a statement saying we're committed to, for example, Black Lives Matter, but then that message is all we're giving people. We're not actually looking at to keep it up with action. So what can those companies do to change when they think that their words are all they need?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is they need to hire a really excellent marketing communications person or team that knows how to vet those types of messages. I actually think it's really important, especially wading into the areas of race. They need to have a review team that includes people of color. I think that that's really important. And even if that's a consultant, if they don't have the resources to have, if they don't have people of color on their team, but even then it can go sideways. I don't know if you saw that the Democratic members of Congress appeared in African kente cloth. Did you see that?
Yeah, and was it the wrong one or something?
Well, no, it just was really off-putting. But there were
Yeah.
a number of the Black members of, even Kamala Harris was one of them, I believe, who were part of that organization. I think the one thing that I think could have possibly been done differently is a company or an organization needs to say to their Black people or their people of color, you need to tell us your honest opinion about what we're doing. It has to be really important. I mean, it's really important to say, give us your honest opinion. It's okay if we don't like what you say. They have to be given the opportunity to be critical, right? And that often employees or organizations don't give people that opportunity to be critical. I just wonder how that decision was made, because it just was really off-putting to see these white people in African fabric, right? Cultural appropriation. So
Well, one
yeah,
of the
so
reasons, of course, that we don't get more criticism of how companies do business is because of that people of color have not always had a positive reception when they've given feedback. And Robin
yes.
DiAngelo talks about this in her book, White Fragility. So companies first need to create a safe space for criticism. And I think when we look at even on other issues like how companies treat their transgender employees, looking at Google has made some missteps recently in that. How can companies, first of all, recognize that they're silencing employees, and second of all, take their criticism as an opportunity for positive action rather than a threat to their business?
Well, I think the first thing that they should do is create affinity groups. So I don't know if you're familiar with that term. It basically, like a Black employee network, a Latinx employee network, a women's network. Create those networks and then also have an executive sponsor for each of those networks so they have a voice. And that's a really great first step that companies can do. I also believe that smaller companies, like the last company I worked for had like 340 people. And I think that the first step is to do an objective survey to actually talk to their people of color anonymously. So they have an opportunity, and women and other, underrepresented groups, to get feedback from their employees on how they're doing. I think that's the first step. And then the other thing I think that companies and individuals need to do a better job of apologizing authentically if they screw up. And also owning up to the role. I mean, all of us who are white are trying to get a handle on how we have contributed to white supremacy and racism. And we are part of a racist structure, and owning up to our responsibility in being part of that organization, and also acknowledging how we benefited from that. So companies need to look at that as well. Look at every part of a corporate social responsibility policy is to look at every facet of their operation and look at whether it is disadvantaging people of color. Are they environmentally unresponsible actions taking place, things like that. So I think a thorough investigation of the entire organization is really what needs to take place. And until companies really are taking tangible actions that are not just all talk, then they probably shouldn't be talking about Black Lives Matter or other things.
So I want to go back to what you were saying about apologizing, because
Yeah.
I think that's the hard thing. And I think not only do companies need to learn to do a better job, but we as individuals have opportunities on a regular basis as we use social media and we post something that offends someone, and then we end up getting a lot of angry comments below, and we think, I just shouldn't have said anything. Why did I say anything? Because now everybody's mad at me, and I'm just gonna go away. And obviously that isn't what we want people to respond. What is the art of giving a good apology?
Well, I think the first thing is to be authentic. If you cannot apologize and really believe what you're saying, do not do it. So authenticity is critical. And then I think, I feel like people of color have gone through so many horrible things in our country and in our world. But at the same time, I feel like most of them are incredibly forgiving. So I believe my experience is that they appreciate it when people own up to their mistakes. So like, let's say if you say something on social media that is viewed as racist and you're called out on that, I believe the first thing to say is, I really apologize. Here's an example. Have you heard of the term digital blackface?
No.
So it's interesting that if you look at the GIFs that are available on Facebook or on other places, I would say a large percentage of those are people of color, Black people in particular. And a lot of them are not flattering. So if you look at the percentage of Americans, well, I don't know what percentage of Americans are Black, I should know this. And then look at the percentage of GIFs available, it's a way higher percentage that are Black. And most of them are not particularly positive ones. So digital blackface is when I, as a white person, choose a Black GIF on my social media. And that's something that I have learned in the last 6 months. I was not aware that this was an issue. So let's say you do that on Facebook and somebody calls you on it and says, hey, that's racist, you're using digital blackface. My belief is that you should say, I had no idea. I appreciate you telling me about this. Thank them for giving you the feedback and say, I will change from now on. So, the phrase that's common in social justice work is, when you know better, you do better. And so that's all that we can say is, now that I know that, I will fix that and I will not make that mistake again. And thank you for giving me the feedback. That's always important too. I'm sorry if I caused offense. Thank you for giving me the feedback.
And often instead what happens is we get a lot of people who feel quite attacked by somebody giving them constructive feedback, because we could talk about this for ages, but I'm not racist. I didn't intend anything malicious. And I have Black friends. I don't judge anyone by the color of their skin. And so often there's that feeling of defensiveness, and also feeling like Here, I just posted something nice and everybody's attacking me, and that's not fair. Those emotions can be quite tricky to deal with.
Definitely. And I know Robin DiAngelo talks about this, and I wrote an article a few months ago about white women's tears. And white women's tears can manifest often as I feel attacked. It's that you make yourself a victim. And it's often, I feel like one of the things that I've done to try to diffuse some of that is to say, if somebody says I'm not a racist, I say, I'm a racist. I know that I'm part of a racist structure. I benefit from this organization, you know, the structure of racism. So I'm a racist and I'm trying to unlearn racism. And that often kind of shuts them up. I don't know if they learn anything from it, but you know, it's like, yeah, I'm a racist. I own up to it. I hate to say that, but it's true because I benefit from the structure of racism.
And one thing I think Robin DiAngelo points out that is so important is that we often tend to narrow racism to malicious acts against people of color driven by stereotypes and dislike of people of different races. But that isn't what racism is.
Yes.
Racism is simply seeing things through the lens of race in a way that entrenches the privilege of one group over the others. And so it's very, very broad, and it's systemic, and it's not about you as a person. It's just about the system.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the issues people have once they become more aware and they start going back through their tweets, going back through their company history, going back through the literature they've published, they think, oh my goodness, I have published things in the past that were racist. My instinct would be then, because this stuff is on forever, maybe I should go back through everything I've done and take away anything that's problematic, cover this up so it looks like, right, that I've never, I've always been this woke and aware. Do you think that it's okay to go back through everything you've ever done and delete stuff that you suddenly realize now is problematic?
Well, I think a lot of celebrities have realized that's not a good idea because everything, you know, on the internet, everything's forever. Somebody's going to find it. It's going to look way worse if you delete it. You know, yeah, I wouldn't recommend deleting, no. And it's another thing that I've learned in the last year on social media. It's called dirty deleting. So if there's a discussion on Facebook and somebody says something offensive and they're called on it, they go in and delete it. And that's called dirty deleting because a lot of times the people of color on that group have been educating the white person, and then we're losing out on that education. And it looks really bad. So no, I would not recommend companies or individuals delete anything. I think it's better to apologize and to say, hey, I made this mistake. And think about all the people like Justin Trudeau. You know, I love Justin Trudeau, but he was found that he did blackface. It would have been so much better if he'd said, I realized I did this really bad thing. You know, it takes a lot of guts to be able to say that, you know, but you're going to come across in a much better way if you say, I screwed up, I apologize, you know?
Now, you help companies navigate these difficult situations. You help them with their messaging. You help them develop better strategies. Tell us about the work you do.
Yeah, so I have been in business for about a year, but I had a background at the company. I worked in the environmental consulting industry, and I had a background in the last 5 to 10 years of working in sustainability and corporate social responsibility. So that's my passion. Right now, I help companies, help them figure out what is unique and special about them and help them share that with the world. So I do a lot of website content and design and business development and marketing and writing, basically anything involved in communications. I help companies and individuals with that.
And you are offering our viewers a free 30-minute strategy session to help them with their communication.
Yes, I'd be happy to talk to anybody and look at their website and give them some suggestions.
And for those of you watching, if you want to get your free strategy session, if you want to listen to Marie's podcast, if you want to read her articles, we have a link for you. Just go to yourbrilliance.org/Marie. That's yourbrilliance.org/MARIE. Thank you so much, Marie, for coming onto the show. And I wonder if you have any last message you would like to leave our viewers with.
Yeah, I think, something that somebody said this week on my podcast I loved. She encourages everybody to shine, let their light shine. And my favorite thing that she said, her name is Libra Ford, and she's an activist and a nonprofit executive here in Portland. She said, if somebody doesn't like your shine, give them some sunglasses. And I think that's a good message for speaking your truth. I feel like right now we're at a crossroads in history, and our democracy is in peril, and we have a choice to decide which side of history we're going to be on. So my final message would be to vote. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you have a safe way to vote, and save our democracy.
Thank you so much, Marie. And thank you out there for watching. Now, did you have any aha moments or insights while watching this interview? If so, share them with us in the comments. And for more interviews like these, make sure to subscribe to Your Brilliance TV here on YouTube, and then come on over to yourbrilliance.com for more tips and insights on how you can live your most brilliant life. See you next time.